Welcome to Off the Record News. I'm your host, Diana Longry. Thank you for tuning in. Off the Record News is a weekly program coming to you with news from around the metro area, oftentimes focusing more likely on the east side of the metro, St. Paul, and Maplewood. Now tonight we are going to conclude our report about the RFP process that the city of Maplewood is going through with regard to renewing or obtaining a new contract for the collection of their city's trash and their recycling. Now, we've been covering this topic side by side with covering the issue going on in St. Paul with the collection of trash in St. Paul. Now, to give you a brief update on what has occurred in St. Paul, as you may remember, there was a lawsuit that was before the Ramsey County courts with regard to the trash collection process that the City Council of St. Paul put in place, that it was against the charter and that the court was being asked to give the petitioners relief and to put the issue of how the trash should be collected on the ballot in the fall. And that, of course, is because the city of St. Paul is a charter city, and under that charter, the requisite number of residents had signed a petition, and it was duly certified by Ramsey County, and that petition asked that the matter be stayed. It was in front of the city council. That petition asked that it be stayed and that the matter of organized collection be put on the ballot in the fall. Well, the city council did not do that, and so they instituted organized trash collection, ignoring the citizens' petition, and that's of course why there was a court case in front of the Ramsey County court. Well, the order has come out, and we hopefully will have somebody on here in the next week or two who will go into depth about the ramifications of that order and what it means. But in general, the court agreed with the petitioners that indeed the matter, as a result of the city charter, that the matter of organized trash collection, because it was a valid petition of the residents of St. Paul, that matter is going to be on the ballot this fall. Now, of course, the city is going to appeal that order, and that takes quite a number of months as well. But we'll have to see what ramifications that appeal will have on whether or not, if it's on the ballot in the fall, if there's other additional motions to stay that action until it's finally resolved, or exactly what will happen, because there's a lot of different motions that either side could make during this interim in order to ask the court for various types of relief as a result of the court order or as a result of the appeal. But that's for another show. Today we, as I mentioned, we are going to conclude our report on the process in the city of Maplewood. Now in Maplewood, we would not have the same situation that there is in St. Paul, because Maplewood is what is called a Plan B city. They don't have a charter. They're organized in a totally different way, and their governance is totally different. And so in a Plan B city, the city manager is the one who runs the day-to-day affairs, who has control over who is hired, who is fired, and manages everything just as if they were a CEO of a corporation. And the city council is in charge of, well, approving the budget, enacting ordinances, creating public policy, and, well, of course, setting your taxes. And that's what they do in a Plan B city. And the residents of a Plan B city do not have the power of initiative and referendum or recall. those are the types of rights that the residents of St. Paul have, though, because they have a charter for their governance. So now in Maplewood, they've had organized trash collection since the year 2012. And when they decided to do organized trash collection, they just decided we're not going to do it in zones. We're not going to try to keep the little guys in business. We're just going to put it out for an RFP, a request for proposals. And under that request for proposals, whatever company is bidding on the city has to bid on the trash collection for the whole entire city. So that pretty much throws out most of the small haulers because they don't have sufficient manpower, resources, or trucks in order to cover a city as large as Maplewood and a city with a population of about 38,000 people. So you can understand why many people in Maplewood were very upset with this move, because what it did is it threw out all the small trash haulers who had been serving Maplewood for many years. It threw them out of the city entirely. They lost that entire customer base with no hope of ever being able to get a piece of the pie so that they could replace the customers that they lost. Well, now Maplewood is at that point where they need to put in a new contract in place for the collection of trash and the collection of the recycling. And previously they had a contract for trash collection and a contract for recycling collection. Now they're proposing that a company can respond to the request for proposals by saying whether or not they want to propose that they cover just the trash hauling or just the recycling hauling or both trash and recycling. Well, now you can see where that might lead. Again, having an RFP set up, asking for people to put in requests, proposals rather, where they might cover both trash hauling and recycling collection, that will certainly throw a lot of vendors out the window, because how many vendors are there in the metropolitan area that have enough manpower, trucks, and the wherewithal to collect all the trash, all the recycling of Maplewood, a city of 38,000 people, and still be able to maintain all the contracts that they currently have throughout the rest of the metropolitan area? Well, you can see where that will lead. Now, in our last news program, we ended at the spot where we were looking at the rates that are currently being charged the Maplewood residents for recycling per month. And what we learned is that Tennis, the company that does the recycling collection, we learned what amount they charge Maplewood per pickup, per household, and then we learned what amount the city of Maplewood charges that very same resident. So let's pull up that photo of that screenshot and we'll take a look. And we'll pull down our title there, and you can see that it says that Tennis Sanitation, under their contract with the city for collecting the recyclables, they charge the city $2.86 per household per month. And keep in mind, Tennis also supplies the carts. So it isn't that the city of Maplewood has to go and buy carts and supply carts. No, Tennis collects with the supplies with, they supply their own carts for collection. And then when Maplewood is turning around to get reimbursed by the household for the recycling that they just paid to Tennis, Maplewood City Hall charges that household $3.54 per month on the water bill. Okay, so when we come back to this, let's take a look and do the math. In the last program, we didn't really do the math. We kind of guessed it was somewhere between 50 and 60 cents just because it was just quick and dirty. Well, guess what? We've sat down and crunched a few numbers, and the numbers don't lie. When you take a look at the difference between what Tennis under the contract is actually charging for the recycling service that they provide, and that's that $2.86 per month, and you subtract that from what the city of Maplewood is charging those same households, $3.54, that means that the city of Maplewood is collecting 68 cents over and above what it costs to provide the services for recycling collection. 68 cents. And so we broke those numbers down even further, and we compared the difference between what Tennis is charging for their services to provide the actual work, to provide the carts, to provide the promotional materials, to provide all the other things they're required to provide under their contract to inform the public about what is recyclable and what isn't recyclable, and to provide extra services for the Maplewood residents. If you take a look at what that difference is, Maplewood is putting a 20% surcharge on that recycling fee every single month. A 20% surcharge. That's what 68 cents a month means. Now, if you're getting your numbers out and you're doing a few calculations, you might say, well, Diana, that's actually, if you look at that percent, it's actually a little more than 20%. Well, what I did is that we also heard in our last news program Maplewood complaining about the fact that the St. Paul Regional Water Department charges the city of Maplewood 13 cents per quarter per household to put the billing for the recycling in the on the water statement to be delivered to the home. So Maplewood doesn't send out their billing for the recycling to the residents. They have the St. Paul Regional Water Department do that instead. So if you took that 13 cents and spread it out over a quarter, that's approximately 4.5 cents per month that Maplewood is being charged by the St. Paul Regional Water Department to do the billing for the city of Maplewood. So you see, I subtracted that off of the 68 cents that Maplewood is collecting from every household over and above what Tennis is actually charging for recycling. And so then that's where you get 63 cents or thereabouts, and that's how you get your 20%. So that's astounding when you think about it. One of the data practice requests that we're going to be doing in the next week or so here is to ask the city of Maplewood for a breakdown as to how they spend that 68 cents per month that they collect from every single household that is having the recycling services provided to it. Now, we already can account for certainly the postage costs that St. Paul Regional Water is charging. We know that line item. We want to know, what do they do with the rest of the money? It'll be fascinating information. So let's get started with our film footage from the recent workshop where the City Council was having a presentation about the things that will be different in their contract that's coming up, and under this RFP, the request for proposals, what is being looked at for under that, and what services are they expecting the new contract to include? Let's take a look at our first clip.
City buildings and parks would be included in the contract for the trash hauling. Right now, Tennis Sanitation, as our recycling hauler, picks up the recycling in our city facilities and parks free of charge as part of the contract for the residential recycling. However, when we organized our trash hauling, we did have a contract with Waste Management for our city facilities, so we could not include that into the contract back then. But now we'd like to look at that option. Right now, we go year to year and put out bids and get prices for that yearly. City buildings and parks.
We heard in that clip that Tennis Sanitation provides to the city of Maplewood free, under their current contract, the collection of all recyclables at the city properties and at the parks. See, so conceivably, if Tennis were charging the city for that service, then we could maybe say that part of that 68 cents that Maplewood has tacked on as a surcharge on every single homestead or household in Maplewood, maybe part of that cost is going towards picking up and providing services of picking up the recycling at City Hall and at other public buildings and at the parks. But that's not the case, because you see, Tennis is providing that service to Maplewood City Hall for free. Let's take a look at our next clip.
Planning for curbside organics collection. Of course, Ramsey County is currently working on an infrastructure for organics collection, which would be in durable compostable bags that would be placed in the trash cart, and then those trash carts would be tipped at the energy facility in Newport and made into compost. So that'll be somewhere in the term of the contract. They're looking at maybe 2022 for rolling that out. So we want to ensure our contract outlines a proposal for that. Planning for
Now, this idea about collection of compostable organics, that would be like your foodstuffs, various things that isn't really trash and it's not really recycling. And we're not talking about yard waste either. So as she indicated, they would have a separate bag that you would put those items in, you would seal it up and just throw it in the trash can, and then when they dump the trash can into the truck, well then all of these bags will be mixed around with the trash. Now, the issue that I see in all of this is that hopefully the bags are sturdy enough that they don't get punctured with all the other trash that's mixed around in that trash container and then mixed around in the truck and then dumped out once they get to the place where they're going to dump the truck's contents. So you see, that's an issue. Another issue is that there's how to fish out all of these bags. So I know that they're trying to cut down on the number of trash cans that are going to be out on the curbside, but there are, I think, some physical limitations with regard to the idea that you're just going to throw these black bags into your trash can. We'll have to hold our opinion on that until we see it in action, but those are just some of my comments I have thinking about the logistics of what she said. Let's continue.
And then here's something that's really new and innovative approach to attempting to reduce trash and increase recycling. And this is a pay-as-you-throw pricing methodology, so you'd have more variable pricing. Right now we have a structure where the 32-gallon is only about $1 less than the 65-gallon. So there's not a lot of incentive to reduce your cart size. So an extreme example would be maybe the 32-gallon is $5 and the $95-gallon is $15. So it's subsidizing that 32-gallon, encouraging people to go down to that smaller cart and then increase their recycling.
Now, this concept of pay as you throw has both pluses and minuses to it. Certainly, one thing that we have seen in Maplewood, and we've seen in St. Paul as well, is that there is the availability of these really large cans, and the differential, as she indicated, between the really large can and the next can size down is really not that big. It's just only like $1 or $2. It's something that is not substantial, and that if you're thinking that, well, okay, if I'm going to be buying the service, I might as well get the biggest can, because what if I need it? Okay, well, certainly then there's other circumstances where a family might need that larger can, let's say because they have small children and they have disposable diapers, or there's other kinds of issues in which that they need to have that bigger can because of the type of materials that they use in their home. Again, I can think of seniors. Sometimes you think, well, seniors, maybe they really don't use big cans, but what if they are residing in their home and they have healthcare issues, and perhaps there are additional medical supplies that are different types of pads that they have to use and change their bed all the time because they're living at home. Or perhaps they too may have Depends or diapers that they have to use for incontinence. And so you see, you can't always just assume that people are just using to overconsume and just throwing stuff out and being wasteful. Sometimes there are things in their life that account for the fact that they need that larger garbage can. And is it the larger families or the seniors that have a lot of different types of cotton type of bedding material or that's disposable that they have to get rid of? I mean, are they in the position that they can afford to pay that great differential that she talks about, that when you go to the pay-as-you-throw system, that they pay the really large fee, and those people who have very little to throw away pay a very small fee? So you see, we want to encourage people to do more recycling and to not be wasteful and be thinking about the types of containers that they buy products in, so that that way they have less to throw out and they have more to use for recycling or for reuse. But you also have to think of those financial ramifications. Now, I know that we have one of our reporters who wanted to talk a little bit about this pay as you throw, and I believe that he's walked into the studio right now. So let's find out if he wanted to talk a little bit more about the pay as you throw after we return from this clip.
So with the trash carts, we own the carts for trash hauling, and I wanted to point this out because we are looking at the feasibility of purchasing recycling carts. So here's a scenario currently for our trash carts. In 2012, when we first organized trash hauling, we ordered 10,330 trash carts at a price of $404,876 approximately. Those carts have a 10-year warranty, and we finance those through a 7-year utility bond. To pay for that bond, the city charges 75 cents per household per month and that's added onto the trash bill to cover the cost of the carts. And the final payment for that utility bond is ending now this year. This will be the 7th year, so our carts will be fully paid off. And moving forward, we'll work with our finance department to come up with a cash flow plan for replacement carts, because we are finding that there's about 1 to 5% of our carts that need to be replaced each year. And then financial management plan to determine the future cart fee. You know, is that 75 cent per household still an accurate number? Do we want to increase that, decrease that, depending on what our goals are? So that's something we'll look at.
Now, here's a fascinating number that they threw out, is that on the trash bill, the city of Maplewood has added on 75 cents per month to pay for the trash carts. Well, okay, I can understand that, because the city of Maplewood, they bought the trash carts, they have to pay for them somehow, so they're going to pass that on to the consumer. And that's what they did, 75 cents per month. But now, when you think about that 68 cents per month that they've tacked on to the recycling bill, you wonder to yourself, okay, so now you're puzzled. Why is there 68 cents on the recycling bill when Tennis provides free recycling services to the city of Maplewood for City Hall and the parks and the public buildings and supplies the carts? So we still are puzzled by the accounting system up at the city of Maplewood. Now I have here joining me Mr. Joseph Waters, who one of the issues that he wanted to focus on was the issue of the pay-as-you-throw. And certainly I've talked a little bit about that, but Mr. Waters, what are some of your thoughts on the pay-as-you-throw?
Well, I find it rather interesting because in 2012, when they first talked about this, a lot of people had said, we want to pay as you throw because you have snowbirds and so forth, or people like myself at the time that had a house didn't throw away a lot of trash every week. I only threw away a small amount, so it didn't make sense for me to have a cart. Now, some 7 years later, it's kind of like they see the light. Let's go with a pay-as-you-throw. That actually makes more sense, so we can get more compliance, or we can get more compliance would be more of the word for Maplewood, but I find it rather interesting that 7 years later, they're now going with that. But there's one thing I want to add. I just kind of chimed in when you talked about the 68 cents charged to the recycling bill and the 75 cents the city charges. It kind of reminds me, and this is kind of dating myself a little bit, when push-button phones first came out, you used to have to pay more for a push-button phone versus a dial phone. Well, they didn't get rid of that fee for some 30 years after push-button phone comes out. So when I hear you have a 68-cent charge to the recycling bill and then a 75-cent cart fee being charged, it's kind of like they must have hired somebody from the old phone company.
Well, that's a great observation about the differential in cost between whether or not you had one type of phone versus another.
And then I might say too, the other thing is too, as I was listening to that, it's like, why is the city charging? The city owns the carts. I understand that because they wanted to make it more competitive for everyone to get involved. But why are you charging a fee? Why don't you just incorporate it into the bill or take so much out of the bill and set aside for new carts? Why are we having all this other fees? I understand it's for, transparency purposes, but it's like you're basically paying $140 for the cart between recycling and the garbage service.
Right, and one of the things I had indicated earlier in the program is that we're going to be doing a data practices request to find out exactly how the city does spend that 68-cent surcharge on the recycling bills that they charge to every household. And we know a portion of it, of course, is that 13 cents to send the bill out quarterly through the St. Paul Regional Water Department, but that still leaves us with a surcharge of 63 cents per month per household. And I want to know how they are spending it. Or maybe it's just in a big kitty up at City Hall waiting for them to use it to go buy some more vacant land somewhere like they did with the utility fund, where they took $2 million out of the sanitary utilitarian fund and used that to buy property that eventually is just going to be vacant land waiting for some developer to come along and take it off their hands.
I got a feeling that's what they're doing. And the funniest thing is I'm surprised they don't offer paperless billings, because most people charge, most places that I deal with charge to actually send you a bill because they want to encourage paperless billing. So
and that goes along with recycling. We'd be using less paper.
Wow.
I think you've got an idea there, Mr. Waters. We should use electronic billing and be more mindful of how much paper we're using.
It works for me. That's how I get all my bills.
Good thought. Well, let's continue with our next clip.
And then for the recycling, we have a great opportunity to apply for a grant with Ramsey County. They offer a public entities grant where they'll cover the cost of 1/2 of the carts. So when we're looking at recycling, right now with our residential curbside, there's about 12,000 carts at an estimated $55 per cart. That's $660,000, of which Ramsey County would cover half that cost. So we did look at some feasibility of funding those. One option would be to fund that $330,000 with the city's recycling reserve fund. And then, of course, we still have the 4,206 multifamily units, but again, we don't have that many carts out there, and we are looking at the dumpster option. So we'd have to look at the opportunities there and the costs for city-owned dumpsters, if that is something that we wanted to look at.
So now the city is thinking to themselves, well, since Ramsey County is going to give us half the money, of course, where did Ramsey County get the money? Well, from the taxpayers. So if Ramsey County is going to give them half the money, well, then we'll just go and find some more money and we'll go and buy our own carts. Now, I don't think that they're going to take that money out of the 63-cent surcharge that they've been charging the households in Maplewood every month for the last 7 years. I think they're probably going to add on an additional surcharge to cover those carts. What do you think, Mr. Waters?
I think you hit it right on the nose. It's, they see an opportunity to get more money, and boom, and people think, well, if you add another 50 cents, nobody's going to notice. When you start to get into big numbers, it's like you're so far out there that, right now, most people aren't going to mind. It's like, oh, that's not going to kill me.
Right. And I thought to myself, if you're looking at that 63 cents per month surcharge that Maplewood has been charging each and every household every month for, on top of the recycling fee as extra money, if the cart only, let's say for instance, if Maplewood were to buy carts, if Maplewood were saving that money that they'd been collecting all along, they would have collected enough money for every household, at the cart being $55 a cart, they would have already come up to that amount of money per household in the first 5 years, I believe, of the recycling contract.
For is it $55 a cart?
Yes.
What size cart are you talking about?
Well, whatever recycling one they were
Oh,
indicating.
recycling cart. Okay, I was thinking the trash cart. Okay.
Yeah, and so if that's the case, well, then Maplewood should already have that money in their pocket, but I suspect that they don't.
Well, they do, but it's probably allocated for something unrelated to what it's being collected for.
Yes. Now let's take a look at our next clip.
As the only survivor of the original trash routine, I thought I would give a little bit of background on the ownership of carts. We decided that that was more than appropriate for a couple of reasons, but the first one is you never have to deal with the vendor exchange that they are still dealing with in St. Paul in their marvelous approach to organized trash. That was the major reason. And then the environmental committee at that time also said they didn't want 5 different colors, 4 different styles. When you look down the street, it's kind of nice to just see a trash cart and a recycling cart that are the same at every house. It just is a better environmentally pleasing effect.
Except that she doesn't realize is that when you have trash collection in Maplewood, you only have one vendor providing the service, and they only have one color cart. Because let's say if it was waste management, for instance, waste management doesn't have 4 or 5 different colored carts, not from what I understand.
No, from my understanding, Waste Management has one colored cart. Matter of fact, they bought Advanced Disposal, and other than maybe the logo, you can't tell the difference in the color of the carts.
Right. And of course, if you sign up for the yard waste, well, yes, you're going to have a different cart then, because that's to indicate that it's yard waste. So in Maplewood, that particular cart is blue. A trash can is black, and guess what? She was talking about how the recycling carts would all be the same color. The recycling carts are brown with an orange cover. So
Isn't that tennis sanitations?
That's exactly right, but they are still all the same color for recycling. He doesn't have 4 or 5 different colored carts. So this story that Kathy Juneman is saying is not very accurate.
Well, I think what she's also trying to say, she's trying to say, look how much better we are. Well, St. Paul just started organized trash collection, and we'll see over the next few months where it's actually going to go. But you're going to have a rainbow of colors, if you have a rainbow of colors out there, because it's going to take time to get those colors out and the standard color in. So it just takes time. Maplewood, like I said, had its rainbow of colors, but where I lived at the time, Tennis Sanitation, it did both recycling and the garbage pickup. So my neighborhood was basically, the brown over the orange over brown carts.
We have another clip. This continues the discussion.
And the other thing is that when people move, and people move in and they go, well, who does the trash? And he did. This way the cart stays with the house. When you move in, there's a trash cart, there's a recycling cart. It's just the ease of making sure that people know what to use, when, how it happens. It's just much simpler. So that's kind of how that came about. And I'm actually pleased to see that we're actually looking at recycling carts the same way. Because in the long run, people say, well, isn't it better if the vendor supplies the carts? If you've been around long enough, you realize that if they're supplying the cart, you're paying for it. It's not any different than, yes, we have a cart fee on our bill, but so do they. It's just not identified as the cart fee. And again, it would be the same thing. Vendor change, no issue. And the other thing that people wondered about it at first, but most people now go, what do I do if something's wrong? You call the trash hauler, because it's in the contract that they take care of the cart exchange. So if you have a broken cart, whatever, you call them and they take care of it.
So first, she doesn't trust the household and the people who live in that household, that when they move out or new ones move in, that they're going to be able to have the mind thought and the wherewithal to figure out how to take care of their own trash. And that's the reason why we want to have the carts, so we can leave the carts at the house so they have a place to put their trash. Yeah, like how many homeowners moving into a brand new place say, I don't know what to do with my trash. I think I'm just going to throw it in the front yard.
Well, as I listen to that, a couple of things come to mind. If you're moving to a house that's just been remodeled, you're going to have a dumpster there anyways. If you have a new house that's being built, there's going to be a dumpster there. So that's where you're going to throw your trash. And then finally, a lot of cities have disclosures when you're selling a piece of property. Is that going to be on a disclosure form that says you get your trash from the city of Maplewood? Maplewood provides you with the trash. Is that going to be on the, I can't think of what you worked in real estate, I can't think of the form that the homeowner has to disclose to the new buyer, saying that these are the conditions, or these are the issues that face this particular piece of property.
Yes, yes. And this idea that, well, whether or not if the city supplies the cart, or for instance in the recycling that Tennis supplies the cart, it's built into the price anyway. Well, I think as we've seen with the recycling, well, perhaps Tennis has it built into his price, but that's not the issue that the people of Maplewood have. The issue they have is that the city of Maplewood has added on an extra 20% surcharge, which nobody knows where it goes to, because it certainly doesn't go for carts. And when the city of Maplewood decides that they need to add on carts, they are going to add a fee on, because I doubt that the recycling costs are going to go down in the next RFP.
And the other question I have too, because when they originally were talking about this in 2012, they said if you need a replacement cart, you're going to have to pay for it. Now, right now, and I'm just using waste management because or Tennis because that's what I'm familiar with. If a cart got damaged or destroyed, Tennis would just send me a new cart. They wouldn't be charging me for the new cart. From my understanding in Maplewood, and I don't know if this has changed or not, if you damage the cart and you need a new cart, you have to pay for that.
That was the way it was set up originally, yes, that's correct, because there was this issue about that there might be these microchips in the handle of the cart so that they could track which carts went to which houses. And there was some discussion by some residents that they didn't want microchips in their carts and that they would just cut them out. And they were told, well, if you deface those trash carts and you go and you cut it up, then you will have to pay for that cart. So that's what they were told when certain residents said, I don't want microchips in my trash can, and maybe I'll just take it out. And they were told, you can't do that.
Just out of curiosity, what happens if, and I see this a lot, what happens if the squirrel destroys the trash can? Is the homeowner responsible for that?
That I do not know. I have a trash can such as that has been attacked by squirrels, and I haven't gotten to the point of asking for a new cart that is not defaced by the neighborhood squirrels.
Okay, just
But
wondering.
I'll let you know sometime when I find out.
I'd be curious to find out.
How that works out. Well, let's continue with our next clip.
Thank you. Councilmember Niblett.
Yes, thank you. I think Councilmember Ginneman answered my question, but I just want to be clear. So the 10,333 trash carts that were purchased in 2012, those don't belong to us? We have to give them back?
City of Maplewood does own those. We are finalizing the purchase of those through that utility bond. So the last payment of that utility bond will be this year.
Okay, so, so the 12,000 recycling carts are different, right? Than the 10,000? Okay,
Correct.
so do we own the recycling carts then? No. All right.
Thank you.
Now that's Sylvia Neblett, who is the newest council member next to Mr. Knutson. They were appointed to the council. Keep in mind that Maplewood's mayor is also appointed. So here we have a body of 5 individuals who are supposed to represent the people. And out of those 5, only 2, during this term, only 2 were elected. The other 3 are all appointed. And so you can see that one of the new members, she's confused about the carts. Now the question I was expecting her to ask was not about who owned the carts, because I thought the presentation was pretty clear about that. I was expecting her to ask the question, why is it that we use 10,000 carts for trash collection, and yet we use 12,000 carts for recycling? What's the difference, and why do we have a difference of 2,000? What does that mean? Now, I've got a couple of ideas about what that could mean, because in Maplewood, there is actually a nice little provision in the ordinance that says that if you share trash collection with your neighbor or your relative, that you can provide proof of that, and so you don't have to duplicate services. Well, that of course is very nice, and Mr. Waters, that goes back to kind of that idea is pay as you throw. I mean, if you are finding that you don't need to have that much of trash collected, why not combine what your needs are with your neighbor? Isn't that the neighborly thing to do?
Well, that was originally brought up during the 20th help. Why can't we share carts? Well, at that time, Mayor Rosbach said, no, I don't want that. You know?
Right.
But it's like, they're going like, why can't we share? Well,
Right.
what is wrong with that? I mean, I kind of did it with my neighbors. But I'd moved out before trash or organized collection had started. But prior to that, that's kind of what we did, and I just paid him a stipend.
Right.
You know, to collect the small amount of trash that I had. I don't see what the issue is.
Right, exactly. Well, it did turn out that clearer minds prevailed over then Mayor Rosbach, and it did get into the ordinance, which is a good thing. Another provision that got into the ordinance, which is a good thing, is that, say, for instance, if you don't have much in the way of disposable trash, and you can show that you bring your trash to a place to responsibly dispose of it yourself, and you've got the receipts to show that's what you do, that's another way to opt out of the organized trash, the mandated organized trash collection in Maplewood. So Maplewood has made a few provisions that way, but you have to know about it. So I'm thinking that maybe there's 2,000 households in Maplewood that somehow or other, for whatever reason, that they have found that the opt-out way works good for them.
Or you could have, an extra 2,000 houses that have extra recycling carts. That has happened. I've had a couple
Yes.
they blow around in the wintertime, so I've ended up with a couple extra recycling carts. I know in Minneapolis where they stopped using them, you had one particular guy, he had 4 of them. He went down in just the neighborhood and started picking them all up.
Yes. Well, let's take a look at our next clip, where I believe Marley Abrams, the appointed mayor, is going to be talking about recycling.
And my question really refers to some of the stories that we've been hearing on the news, that some of the recycling options are really not legitimate options. I know that in the past, some recycling materials have been sold to foreign governments, and China being one, and they are no longer interested in purchasing paper and plastic kinds of recycling from the U.S. And so I gave Sean a heads up that I was interested in that so that we can tell our citizens what happens to the materials that they are actually recycling. Because the whole purpose of recycling is to keep that stuff out of the landfill. So Sean sent a very comprehensive answer today. And Sean, do you want to explain the answer that you provided earlier today? Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Tennis Sanitation, as part of their contract, they do an annual report. It's very thorough. Thank you. And I was reviewing that, and you'll see that later this year, maybe next month. But they did outline the markets currently. Of course, they are challenging for recycling right now because of the issues with China not accepting those materials. But in the Twin City area, we are really fortunate due to the fact that there's a lot of local markets. So they've been able to find a market for those products. One item that we no longer accept is plastic bags. For a while, there was an opportunity to take those bags and turn them into a crude oil, but that is no longer an option. So Tennis no longer accepts those as part of our recycling program. But each year, we look at the opportunities of collecting new and different materials. Right now, we are collecting linens as part of our recycling program.
And I can see one of the consequences of the change in the market for recycling is that if it turns out that people are putting items in the recycling can that they thought were recyclable, maybe at one time were recyclable, but now those items are actually trash items, the recycler has to take them aside and get rid of them as trash items. And maybe that will have an impact then on that cost that is proposed under the next RFP. I don't know, but that would be something I would look at.
Well, I know in the city of Minneapolis where I work, they used to have a separate bin for recycling and a separate bin for the trash. About 4 years ago, they decided we're just going to let people throw everything into one bin. Now, in Northeast Minneapolis, Waste Management does have a recycling facility there, so they'll sort it out. They figured that way more people would recycle. So instead of having a separate cart for recycling and a separate cart for trash, maybe they ought to just have one bin, throw everything in there, and let whoever hauls it away haul it to a place where they make the separations. That way, the citizen isn't so confused about what they can and can't recycle.
Right, yes. And there's one other thing I wanted to point out about appointed Marley Abrams, is that she has this habit of switching back and forth in her terminology when it suits her. In that when we've covered her position when it comes to the licensing of rental properties in Maplewood, she is always talking about protecting the residents, whether or not, if they are legal or illegal, that they may feel uncomfortable squealing on their landlord because they might be fearful of being deported. And so then she refers to who she's trying to protect as residents. Now you'll notice though, when it came to this whole issue about recycling and trash, she's only talking about the citizens. So I'm wondering why she sees a difference between residents when it comes to rental licensing and citizens when it comes to trash collection and recycling pickup. I don't know the answer to that. I just wanted to point it out. Let's take a look at our next clip.
Again, with Tennis Sanitation and our current recycling program, we are fortunate where the markets are local and we're able to maintain our current status quo. And if there is an opportunity where things are slowing down, Tennis will just hold on to those recyclable materials until the pricing goes up because they have the storage for that.
Okay, that's very good, thanks. And I really appreciated the fact that we're looking at composting as well as kind of the next step. Do you want to comment on that just for a moment?
Yes, thank you. So I think MPCA study found that about 40% of our trash actually is compostable material. So Ramsey County has been working on a plan for getting that compostable material out of the trash for many years. Right now they accept drop-off organics collection at their yard waste sites. And here in Maplewood, we're actually going to be one of the satellite sites. It'll be located in between the MCC and Ramsey County Courthouse in that parking lot, and so that'll open up later this summer. So that drop-off opportunity is there right now. Again,
Now this is good news to know. So if you've got those organic wastes, basically you can just drive on over to City Hall and go to the dump site. Wow, that sounds like a great place to have your organic dump off, right? Right between the community center and City Hall and the courthouse. Wow. Let's hope that they can control the flies. So let's continue with our next clip.
and then the next stage is, of course, curbside organics collection. And for years, they've grappled with how to do this. Would it be a third cart? Would it be collect it with the yard waste? But the current plan, now that Washington and Ramsey County own the Resource and Energy Center in Newport, is to collect it in those compostable, durable compostable bags. So you put all your yard waste in this bag and then bag it up and put it in the trash cart, and so you wouldn't have an extra cart. And so again, that infrastructure hopefully will be in place by 2022.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Now, just to be clear, yard waste is not the same as the organic collection pickup. And I think she misspoke there when she said that that people would be putting yard waste into the bag. I think she meant to say they'd be putting organics into the bag. And so there's I think a clarification that needs to be made there. I don't think you're going to be mixing your organics with your yard waste.
I don't think so.
No, because they're two different things, aren't they, Mr.
They are,
Waters?
you know, because I know when my mother had a garden, when I would cut the grass, I would dump the grass into her garden, and she would use it as fertilizer in her garden. So, and then you wouldn't want any food waste or anything like that mixed in with that.
No, definitely not. Well, let's continue.
I will give some credit to tennis. Some places have other companies, and you can't trace where it goes as easily. So I give tennis a lot of credit also for having those, they seek out the local markets. So we can actually recycle things that other places do not. And so that's going to be one of our considerations when we do an RFP. I think that should be in the RFP. Where does it go?
Okay.
And I will.
Now, this is great that Councilmember Kathleen Juniman has put out there that she is supportive of the efforts of Tennis Recycling and the work that they do for Maplewood. Now, if we think back a few years, it wasn't always that way. She actually had other vendors that she preferred over and above Tennis, and so she always had her little snide look and little comments to make about Tennis. Well, lo and behold, guess what? She's been won over. And you know, that's good news for the residents of Maplewood, because Tennis has done a very good job in Maplewood, and They were one of the trash haulers that actually was ousted out of Maplewood when organized trash collection came to Maplewood. And so they were able to survive by getting the recycling contract and be able to maintain that contact with the city of Maplewood and the services that are there.
I was
Mr.
just going to say, essentially an entrepreneur that adjusted to the market and is thriving today.
Well, let's continue with our last clip.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Just have one question on the term of the contract on the page about the alternatives. Are all of our vendors essentially eligible for any of those alternatives?
Thank you. There is one hauler that does, in the Twin City area, that does only recycling. So obviously that would open up the opportunity for them to put in a proposal for that. But all the other haulers, especially since the city owns the trash carts, you know, that's one opportunity. Also, the city looked at for purchasing trash carts was that smaller haulers then could put in a proposal for our trash hauling because they wouldn't have to supply all those carts.
But my question is, what is the deterrent for the small company to provide service to all of Maplewood? Is it the trash cart, or is it having enough trash trucks to do the pickup for all the thousands of households, over 10,000 of them? Mr. Waters, which do you think is the bottleneck?
I think it's the investment that the trash hauler is going to have to make in equipment to be able to do this contract, because the contract is what, a 5-year contract? Can they amortize, that's a accounting term, can they spread the cost over a 5-year and make any money?
Right.
You know, they may be looking longer term, they may have to look at a larger market. So my guess would be the latter, that it has to do with the capital investment that they're going to have to make up front in order to provide the service.
Right, and I don't think that a trash truck is just a mere $15,000, as if you were buying a little Kia Soul.
No, of course not. Of course not. You're probably talking, my guess, and I have never looked at the cost of a trash truck, but my guess you're talking $450,000 per vehicle.
Similar to the cost of a tractor on the farm.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Well, let's take a look at our last clip.
So when you say all the haulers, do you mean?
Enough. Yeah, is
Yes,
there
we think
enough?
we feel we'll get quite a few competitive bids.
That's my question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Council members, we need 2 volunteers to serve on the Proposal Review Committee. Our green council member over there, Queen of Trash, that was your comment, not mine. Okay, we have our 2 volunteers, Councilmember Juniman and Councilmember Knudsen. There you go. Thank you for that report, that was very helpful. And now, moving on to our...
So these meetings that are going to be held, talking about the terms of the RFP, there will be 2 council members. Now, these meetings are not going to be cable cast, they're not open to the public, and all we can go on is what the council members might decide to disclose to the public as to what occurred. Now, we have only like 30 seconds left, Mr. Waters. Any last comments?
No, I would like to see a couple of citizens on there as well, since they're the actual recipients of this service. Why not have one of your customers, like a customer, like a focus group, telling you what they need and what to look for?
Yes. Well, thank you, viewers, for tuning in. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.